Hello, welcome to the walkthrough for the React Studio for Class 4. This is a project called Healthy Habits, and we're going to make a little app where a user can go in and update how many steps they've taken, how many glasses of water they've had, how many calories consumed, how many calories burned, and then it will represent what the net of those two are. And if you are here, you probably already have gone through and given this thing a try. So you should already have forked and cloned the repository and brought this down to your local computer. And there you would use npm install to download any required dependencies. And you have to make sure you're in the Healthy Habits directory in order to do that. And that's also where you go to actually serve the project up to your browser so that you can keep an eye on what the changes are. So let's do that. I'm going to go into my Healthy Habits directory, and then I already have all my dependencies, so I'm just going to say npm start, and we'll get this thing going. And then we can get straight to the coding. Okay, so yeah, so we have, we don't have any sort of forms down here yet, but we do have these, but these are hard-coded numbers. We don't actually have any sort of dynamic thing. So that's going to be the first thing we take care of. Let's go over here and skip down directly to part 1, and let's get started. So we want to create a state variable to hold those 5 numbers, just to keep track of them as they change, and make sure we can use those numbers to make it so that they can be viewed in real time dynamically. So let's go over to the app component and start right at the top. Okay, so create a state variable. And when we create state variables, we do it with restructuring. So we'll call this numbers, and we will give its setter function the name set numbers. That's kind of the traditional way to do it. And then we're going to reference useState, which is already up here for you at the top, imported with React. And you just put in the initial value, and then after that, you'll use set numbers to update the value of numbers. So the initial value, the instructions say to set it equal to an object with 5 key value pairs. So we're going to have steps, and each of these should be equal to the number 0 for now. So we have steps, water, food, exercise. It's driving me crazy that it's doing that. Okay, and that. Okay, and this is needs a semicolon after it. Gotta kind of keep in the habit of doing that after you set these up this way. Okay, so we have our starting values all saved. So we are good to go. We can now use this wherever we need to. And when we need to update it, we will use set numbers and get 1 or more of these values updated. Okay, but for now, what we really just want to focus on is getting these values sent down to the child component chart. So over here on our page, we have essentially 3 components we're really working with. The main component is app, and then the children components are the chart here at the top, and the details down here, which is these tabs plus the sections that will be below that once we get them displaying. And both of these being children, they can't communicate directly with each other, but they can communicate through the parent. So we can actually have a user give us information down here through some little forms, and then use event handlers to pass that up to the parent, and then use props to send that information down to the chart component where it can display these numbers. So let's just get that part taken care of first. We will make sure that these numbers can show up. So the first thing we need to do is pass it down. So we go down, too far, where the chart component is actually placed into the app component here. We have an instance of it. We just set up a prop called numbers, and then we set it equal to whatever variable exists in this this component that we want to pass down. And in this case, it's also called numbers, but this is referring to our state variable up here. Whatever values are here, we are passing down, and that prop is going to be called numbers. So when we get over to the chart component, you can see down here at the bottom where the prop type validator is, that the numbers is listed here. This is a prop that is expected to be here. It's required. If you have an instance of chart, it means it has to have this attribute, and it is expecting something to be passed down, because otherwise our app doesn't work, right? So we have to require it. And it just, this thing just makes sure that it's an object and that it's there. And it's something that you'll see pretty regularly in professional use. And it's great. You'll see why when we get over to the details component, because you have a whole list all in one place of all of the props, and you don't have to go and try to find them in all of the code. Okay, so we have that listed here, but what do we do with it, right? We've got props coming in here, but it says we need to replace the hard-coded example numbers below with the props coming from the parent. So we know we have a prop called numbers, so we're going to access it. We have to use our fancy braces here, but we're going to access it with props.numbers and then the specific property we're looking for, which in this case is net. This is a circle that's right in the middle. And then we'll do the same thing here. We'll have props.numbers.steps. And this one, 7, okay, is props.numbers.water. We'll change this 1840 to be props.numbers.food. And this 310 to be props.numbers.exercise for the calories burned. Okay, so you can see pretty clearly now, thanks to lovely coloring, that we have all 5 of those properties and numbers now represented. So we would expect to see this. So let's go do a reality check. And there it is. We no longer have hard-coded numbers. We have the zeros that are being passed down from the parent component app, because that's what we said they need to be when the app first starts up. Okay, so we're good. We got that part done. Yay, let's move on to part 2. Okay, part 2 is about displaying the details section. So this is where I was talking about. We had tabs, but we didn't have anything below that. So the first thing we need to do just to get one of them displaying is to create a state variable so that it can keep track of which one is supposed to be displayed, because we only want one of them displayed at a time. So we'll go back to the app component, look at that second to do at the top right here, and create a state variable to track the tab, and we want to initialize it to the string net. So we'll create const, use destructuring again. We'll call it per type, and the corresponding setter is going to be set per type. And then we set that equal to use state, and the initial value it says to make it the string net. Okay, so just like that. And that means that now, in theory, when we go look at this, it should be displaying. Let's take a look. Not yet. What am I missing? Oh, I have not actually passed it in. Okay, right. This is important. Just like we did here with chart where we pass numbers, we have to pass this value down, or the details component doesn't know what to do. So let's do that. So we need to call this type according to the instructions. So the prop will be called type, but what we pass down is the state variable we created here, which is current type. And that way we can have the value that's stored here represented by props.type in the details component. So we come over here, we can see that if we come down to the bottom again, it's great to have these prop types, because this is a list of everything you're going to need. And type is the first one there. It's a string and it is required. So we can see right here, this is where it gets used. Basically, is checking to see which one of these is showing. So this syntax right here, where you do the props.type equals net and, it basically is shorthand. It's like even shorter than a ternary, but it's a very quick way to just basically say only show this div if this is true. And so down here, only show this div if this is true. That's what that syntax is. And this is very common. And this is pretty much it. So right now we're only seeing that because our initial value is net. And we don't have a way yet to go and change it because we have not hooked up these buttons. So let's go do that. If you come down to part B here, it says wire up the tabs. Okay, so we go to the app component again, and we're going to look at each of the tabs in the JSX. So we'll come down here to the return statement and look at these tabs. Okay, so you can see right here, there are on-click event handlers already referenced. And each one of these is referencing the same thing. It's just passing in a different string, right? So if the info tab is clicked, then it's going to change the tab to net. If the water tab is clicked, then it's going to change it to the water one, etc. We have one for each of the 5. So all we need to do here is actually make this do something because it doesn't. So if we go back up here and check again, we can see current type is what we're trying to change. So we need to use set current type. And we went too far. There we go. All we do is call it set current type and pass in, well, we want to pass in whichever type has been passed in as a argument here through this parameter. So that gets passed in, that string should match. And so no matter which one we click on, this should take care of it. It should update it. And once this one has a new value, this will automatically re-render to display whichever one of these currently is. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Here we go. Yeah, whichever one of these divs is currently a match. Okay, so let's go look. And there it is. We can go right through and see that each one of these is now clickable. Okay, so you can see each of these already has a little form that I've created, but the update buttons don't work. And so that's kind of our next step here. What we really need to do is to find a way to make it to where if the user puts something in here, that value gets sent up to the parent and updated in state so that this gets updated because we already know that our state variable is being passed down and represented here. We've proven that by making it show those initial values of 0. So what we want is to get the input here updating those values in the parent component app, but the form is in details. So how do we do that? We are going to use event handlers. That is the way that you get props to kind of run backwards. So let's go here to part 3, making the forms functional. The first thing to do is to set up state variables. We want to track our input values. So let's go over to that and come to the top. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we're going to need to have a whole list of these, right? Oh, and it also says here, don't forget to import the hook that you need. I already had it imported for you over in app. If you look up at the top, React and use state, right? So we want to do that same thing. React is the default export. So it can be done like this, but anything else needs to be put in the brackets. So we're going to do it just like that. And it's still gray because we haven't used it yet, but that's about to change. Okay, so we need to have one for each of the inputs. And if we go back and look at these forms, and you can look at it in the code too, you can see there's 1 input on water, 1 on steps, 2 on food because you've got the description and the calories, and then 2 on here. So we have a total of 6. So let's get those written up here. So we're going to have const and do steps input and set steps input. And set that equal to use state and set the initial value to an empty string because that's what the instructions told us to do right there. Okay, and I have a typo here. Let me fix that. All right, I'm going to copy and paste this and we'll just update, make them all unique. Okay, so we have steps input, we need water input. We'll do that here. We need food calorie input. Let's do food cal like that. And we need food descriptions. We'll do food desk. These things look fine when you type them. They sound funny to say though. Exercise cal. Oh, I made a mistake. I'll fix that in a second. Yeah, this should say set food. It should say set food. Okay. And here we want to do, exercise description and set exercise description. Okay, so now we have 6 unique state variables. We can work with each of them independently. They each correspond to one of those fields, and that really is an easier way to do it when you're talking about binding them to form inputs, as opposed to here where we have properties. And it really, you might just choose to do them all individually all of the time. I wanted to have an example of how to do it this way because updating it has to be done a little bit differently. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so we've got our steps and everything else, water steps. Okay, so let's look at the instructions and see what to do next. We have the state variables and we yeah, sorry. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Yeah, we did that. Okay. Yay. Here we go. Yeah. So if you look at those input elements, we can go ahead and update them by adding the value attributes. So come down here to what I'm talking about, which is the JSX. Oops, not far enough. Yeah, here we go. So you can start to see some of these here. Here we go. We've got our glasses of water, says add two-way binding for the input below. So the first part is just adding the value. And so this really just means we want it to always represent what the most current, value is that's held in state. So we can just set that equal to, the water input, for example. And then I feel like, oh, that's right, because water and steps are, okay, I felt like I was missing something, but they're in the opposite order here. Okay, value equals steps input. And then we will do the same down here for the input. So we have 2 inputs here. This is where we have the description and the calories. So we want this one's value to be, screw there. Okay, so food cal input, and this one's going to be food description input. Okay, then we'll do the same thing for exercise down here. Got both of our inputs. Value equals exercise cal input. And then value equals exercise description input. Okay. So we got that part done. So basically, in order to actually get the numbers all the way up to app, we've got several things we have to do. We're going to have to add events to the input and button elements. We're going to have to complete the handlers that are in the details component that are going to update the state in the details component, but then also pass the new input value up to the parent via props. And then we'll go over to the app component and complete the update handler functions there so that they can receive them and update the state of the values that are held in the app component that then get passed down. And so that's the last step is to use the the update handlers and pass down to make sure it can pull everything up. So we're basically just kind of draw a line from details up to app, and then, back down the chart, which we've already done. So complete two-way binding, part C here, by adding events to each of the input fields and buttons. Okay, so if we go over to the app component, we can look at these empty handler functions, and we'll notice that each of them have let me actually, go over there, for example. Each of them has a parameter. Let's get up here. Get all the way up. Am I not going far enough? Oh, I'm still in the wrong file. I apologize. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is what I was expecting to see. So we have these handlers. These are supposed to be updating these values here, and they're supposed to bring in an amount. So we know that those are going to be numbers, but we have to get them from the details component. So we're going to go back to the details component and kind of see what we need to do there. And but this is where it's all going to end up. It's going to be coming back. We'll handle it here, and we will use this setter to update these. So that's where we're headed. Now let's see where we need to start, where the form actually, initiates kind of changing a value, right? So we'll look at these event handlers. We're going to go into the input elements and actually add the on change events and set each one equal to the name of the change handler that's above. And they're just references, so we don't use the parentheses here. So we are, literally just going to do like we did with the value binding and just have those put in place. So let's come down to the JSX. Make sure I can find, yeah, here we go. All right, so we're back up to our water, and we need to do the same thing. On the water ones, we want it to be on change, and we're going to call, let's go look at our handlers here. So we have handle water change. That's the one we want to call, because this is where we will have some things happen whenever that value changes, and we'll do that in just a second to actually wear it up. But it's going to be handle water change. We're just going to reference it right there. And then we'll do the same thing for steps here. And do on change equals, and then handle steps change. And then we can come down to our buttons down here. Oh yeah, so the inputs first though, right? Because we have to do that here too. So we're going to do on change, and we're going to handle the the food calorie change, because that's this one. And then here, handle the food description change. Okay, and then we will do the same thing for these inputs, and then we'll come back and do the buttons. So change equals handle exercise. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Sometimes I rely a little bit too much on those auto suggest things. Okay. On change equals, and then handle exercise description change. It is pretty smart most of the time. Okay. And then if we go to the buttons, we've got, a button here to submit for the food form. And we already have these handle submit food and handle. And so these are, we'll take care of these. They are here, the submit ones, because you have to remember different handlers do different things. And the steps in water, they're just single amounts. They can update, and then basically we can just send them straight up, and then they will just show up as we are typing them. But these forms are a little bit different. The food input and the handle, I'm sorry, the exercise one, these actually have two values. And then once these are done, we have the on change handlers to actually like save these values in state for the input state variables that are in the details component. But this one is where we say, okay, we want to send that information now to the parent. So we kind of have a little bit more going on. So they're a little more involved. So we're going to start with water and steps and take care of those first because they are a little more straightforward. All right, let's come back to our instructions. I want to make sure I'm not skipping anything here. Okay. So if we go to the steps and water handlers, and we can take a look at them back over in our details component. And you can see that we've got this variable E that we are pulling in as a parameter. That's kind of, it contains a ton of things. You can go look at it in, the browser and see all of its many properties. In this case, we just want to be able to, first of all, stop the page from doing anything when it's, sending information or especially on form submission. We don't want it to like refresh the page or anything like that. So we use our prevent default to keep all of those behaviors from happening that the browser would normally do. And all we want to do is control things ourselves. I've created a variable here for each of these called amount so that we can actually get the value from that event. So e.target.value gives us whatever the user typed in. And you'll remember this from when you did DOM in Unit 1. But we also need to convert this to a number because while we are working with it as a string in the form itself, we actually need it to be a number over, when we work with it here, because especially down here, we're going to have to do some math, right, to update the net values of things. But then also that's the way we're displaying it. Everything over here, these are actually numbers. So let's go ahead and get these first ones done. The first thing we do is we set the new value in state. So we use our setter, right? This is the steps change. So we're going to say steps input, and we're just going to put that amount in. So now our state is updated. And then the second part is to call the update handler via props and pass in the amount. Okay, so there's two sides to this, right? Because we have to make things happen on the other end. But for now, let's just go look and see what the name of that is supposed to be, because really the name we're looking for is whatever it's called here as a prop. So if we come back down to our list, we can see that the update steps is the name of the prop. And that's going to be, there's going to be some sort of function passed down from the parent. But when we work with it here, it's called update steps. Okay. So we are going to find where it was. I don't think I'm going far enough. Here we go. We're going to call that update handler, and we'll say handle steps. Oh, have I already forgotten what it was called? Update steps. I knew that wasn't right because it's, yeah. We have lots of functions here, guys, don't we? All right, update state steps. There we go. Okay. And same thing here, we're just meant to pass in the amount here. Okay, let's do the same thing real quick for water, and then we will go over and make sure things are working on the app side of things. Okay, so we'll need to use our set water input thing and pass in the amount. And then here, we're going to update water and pass in the amount. And you know what I realized I just did? I said it was called update steps, but it's not. It's props.update steps. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything because it doesn't actually exist except as a prop to carry another one through from app, another method, right? Okay, so if we have, I'm going to double check my notes here, make sure there's nothing else we need to do. Nope, that's pretty much it. Okay. So this is the part where we need to come back over to the app and say, okay, we're using this thing that's supposed to be passed down, but has it been passed down? And once it is, what happens to that amount? Where does it go, right? And so here, we can see here, this is where it is. So we're going to need to work with that, but we need to make sure that we actually are bringing it up, right? So we are going to need to actually pass some stuff in here. So let's get this, and I'm going to actually break this out a little bit because we're going to have a bunch of these and it'll look a lot cleaner. And it's like this. Okay. So we already said over in the details component that this needs to be called update steps. Yes, steps, right? And so that's what we have to call it here is the attribute. It has to match the name of the prop. But what we want to pass down is actually what is here, which is handle update steps. And we can verify that by actually coming up here and looking at it. And there it is, handle update steps. So we have this thing, it exists here, it takes in an amount, but we need for our details component to be able to access it to give us that amount. So we're passing it down and that prop is called update steps. Okay, and here we're gonna have a second one, update water. And same thing, handle update water. You'll notice that I try to be pretty consistent about how I use the names. The names are all different everywhere, but they make sense together. Update water, handle update water, right? And that's not for no reason, because this stuff can get really confusing really fast, but it helps if you kind of think about what it is how you're naming them and what their function is. So in this, these are to update the state here. We're updating these values. Okay, so this last piece for these two, since we're just doing steps in water, and it says use prev state to change just the steps property within the numbers object. Okay, and you may be like, what is prev state? Well, this is something that's built into React as part of use state, where it actually keeps track not only of the amount that you are setting it to, but always kind of has in memory whatever the previous value was. And it has to do that because of the asynchronous nature of React, because React is it's recreating the things that need to be changed for the view to re-render in a virtual DOM. And then once it has everything kind of all put together, then the actual DOM updates in the browser. So there's kind of some stuff going on, and you can't always access that new value right away, depending on how many things you're trying to do and when you're doing them. So prev state exists to make sure that you are getting the value that you intended to get. And in this case, it's useful because we only want to update in any one of these. We only want to update one property, not all of them. And we do not want to have to sit here and go, okay, let's list all these out. And, but so the quickest way to do it is to say, okay, let's just go take the previous state of this entire object numbers. And we will say that we're going to update all the properties. And we're going to do that using the spread operator, super handy for doing a bunch of things at once. And then we'll only explicitly update the one that we actually want to here. Okay, so we're going to call set numbers. That is our setter right here, right, for state. So we definitely want to set numbers, and we are going to be setting this, but we need to pass prev state to this first, to a little anonymous arrow function here first. And then we'll say we're returning from that the object that we want. So these brackets represent the object. And the first thing is, like I said, oh boy, that's interesting. Spread operator. Wow. Thank you. Spread operator, and we're gonna basically say I want the entire object as it existed before I said I was going to change it. And then the second property will be just the steps, because we want to explicitly set it equal to this amount that's right here, right? Okay, so just to review that one more time. We have a setter. We're going to pass pre-state into a little function here. And from that little anonymous function, what we want to return is the entire, this object with all the previous values, and then just the new value for steps. And that takes care of making sure that the other 4 values are still what they were before, but this one gets the new value. Okay, so we're going to do this exact same thing. We can just kind of copy this down here, because that's all we really need to do for this one too. We're just going to do it for water instead of for steps, but that the amount that's being passed to handle update water will be the right amount for that. Okay, so we should have everything in place now to go test this. Let's go over. There's really no point in coming over here and testing anything until we get all of that done, because like I said, we're tracing a line from one all the way back over to the other, and we had to get every little bit of it in place in order for the values to travel all the way through. So here's the test. Yay. Yeah. So as I am updating these, not only is it updating here, up here, it's going up to the parent and then being passed down to here. But you'll also find that if I go over the steps tab and then come back and re-render the water tab, that value is still there because we have that binding in place to where it always displays whatever the current value and state is in the details component for the water input. So the same thing with the steps. I can come in here, I can type in 1350 and I can, move it up and down if I want to, and you can see that it's updating in real time up there in the component as I click it. So this is exactly what we wanted to see. All right, so these were the easy ones. These are the ones that require a tiny bit more work because there are 2 fields and a button. So let's, without further ado, get straight over to that. All right, so we're going to head back to details because we want to start with where we are getting the value from the user, and we already have these on change and on click things in place now. So we just need to make sure that the handlers that we are going to be using are going to have all of the bits that they need to have. So first, let's make sure that our food description and food calorie input fields are updating these values that we created up here, right? So let's do that. Set and food, this is the description one, so input. And all we have to do is just set it equal to description, which is the name of the variable right here that has target that, target that value. So that's the input that the user gave us. And then we'll do the same thing for the calories. Let's do that. Let's see, set food cal input, and then we'll change it to amount. Okay, and then we can do the rest of it, which is, what happens when you actually click the button and it calls handle submit food. This is where we want to send all that information. The first thing we do is to make sure that we create an object, and we're going to use this later. This is for the list that's supposed to display on the tab. But we'll go ahead and do it now so that we're doing everything at once. And essentially, we already have this ID that I've created here with a UID generator. And this is something that you can just, go get from React UID that's installed as a dependency. It stands for Universally Unique ID Generator and, ID. And you just use it. You just call it and say, I want a new number, and it creates this crazy long number. And it will absolutely be unique because it's so complex. So all we have left to do is to give this food entry object, its other properties. So we want description, and we want that to be what? We want it to be whatever has been stored in the food description input, right? Whatever that current value is. And then we want the cal property to be the same thing, whatever's currently held as the input at the moment when the submit button is clicked on that form. And so then we will have that, and then we'll be able to list it later when we put that in place. Let's go ahead back to our main focus for the moment, which is to add the values and send them up to the parent. So we're going to add the new entry to, oh yeah, sorry. We got to skip this part. We haven't created the list yet. So yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay, call the update handler. So this is the same thing. We have these update handlers that are being passed down through props. So we're going to say props, and we'll go get the name of it down here in our list. It's update food, update, yeah, update food. That's pretty straightforward. Update food. And we will pass in the calories. So we're going to pass in the food cal input. And then we can actually reset the food description and cal input values now that the submit button has been hit, we've stored it, and we have sent it up to the parent. So now we want to send those back to an empty string. So we use our setters, the same ones that we've got right here, and that we also just used. I know I'm scrolling around a lot, sorry. The same ones we used here to actually set to new values, now we're going to call them again to set them back. So set description, and we want that to be empty string, and then set food cal input and make that an empty string. Okay. And then let's do the same thing with the exercise, and then we will get ready to go. So set exercise description input or the description. Set exercise cal input with the amount. All right, that's updating the state here in the details component. We will take those values and put them in this little object that we're going to use later. And I know I could have done this later, but that's okay. We'll do it now to be consistent. Okay, so this is the exercise description input. Oops. And the calories is the exercise. Oh, what just happened? It jumped on me. There we go. Okay. And then we want to call the update handler. So props.update exercise, pass in the value of the, we want just the calories, right? I'm like, make sure I did that right with the food. Yep. It's just the calorie input. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't use the wrong one. And then we will reset those values. So set exercise description input to an empty string, set exercise cal input to an empty string. Okay. All right, so we have everything set to where it should be sending that information up to apps. So let's go and repeat our steps that we did here before, just like we did for steps in water. We need to actually create those attributes, update food, and call our handlers that exist up top here, handle update food. And then update exercise will be handle update exercise. Okay. And now we go up to those and we make sure they have the functionality that they need. And so by using props, we're bringing the calorie amount up, right? And so it says we need to update both the food calories and the net calories here by adding the calories consumed. And we will use pre-state to make sure we're adding the new amount to the existing total. All right, so same thing as before, we're going to call set numbers, and we'll use pre-state. And then we're going to return this object. Wow, I wish it would stop doing that. It is not a fan, apparently, of me using the spread operator. Okay. All right. Pre-state dot food. Oh, I'm sorry. No, pre-state, because we want to just do everything, the whole entire thing. And then here we want to actually set the food property to pre-state dot food plus amount, because we want to make sure, and this is why pre-state is so important. We need to make sure that when we're reassigning this, that we take the previous value and we're sure that it's the value that was there just a second ago, and we're adding the new amount, and then that total is going to now be stored in this property. And this is really the only way to ensure that it's going to be right every single time, because of the asynchronicity of React. Okay. And really, it's the same formula there, isn't it? Because we're just adding the amount to, oh, except for net, right? Okay. So we'll do the same thing for, oh, semicolons in there. Do the same thing for exercise. And this is just going to be exercise and exercise. And that will just represent the this, except that exercise is not, it affects the net negatively. So we want to make sure we actually subtract it there. So it'll decrease it. Okay. I think we have everything working here. So let's give it a try. We've got food. Let's put in some. Oh, wow. What is happening? All right. Hold, please. Okay. So what I did is I accidentally switched calorie and description. I forgot that I had switched them in the form to put the description on the left. So this one was trying to bind with calories, which is why it said not a number. And this one was trying to bind with the, yeah, this one's supposed to be calories. That one is supposed to be description. And I'm guessing that means I did it wrong for, yep, for exercise as well. So that was an honest enough thing, but it pays to, you know, pay attention, right? So silly me. All right, let's go back and check it again. Let's put in some, I think I was going to do some pizza and, you know, do some calories. There we go. 545 calories consumed, 545 net. Let's add something else. Let's say we got some ice cream. That's 700 calories. Okay. All the junk food, right? So let's go over to exercise, and let's say we decide to go for a 30-minute walk. You can actually, you know, I don't know. Let's say it's worth 150 calories. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it updated it here, but then it also subtracted it from here. So now you can see 1245 minus 150 gives you 1095. So everything is working as expected. So the very last thing we need to do is to get these logs displaying, and all of the HTML and CSS is here for you. So all we have to do is to actually make sure that they are displaying. Let me go check my instructions just to make sure. Yeah, we need state variables to hold the lists. We'll need to add setters to the submit handlers. And then we will need to actually place the details table components into the sections with, yeah, the proper information. Okay, so we're going to come up to here and take a look at the, there we go. Yeah, right here. Okay, so we've already got our properties for our new food entry object here, which is what is actually going to populate that list. But we need a place to put it. And right now we don't have one. We need to create some lists. So let's come up here and create some state variables, just two, one for the food list, one for the exercise list. Okay. Food list and set food list. So we can set it to new values and then use state. And then we're going to set it initially as an empty array. And we'll do the same thing for exercise. All right. Oops. There we go. Oh man. Keyboard's not cooperating. Okay. So now we can use these. We have a place to put things. So let's remember how we have to do that. Because again, you want to make sure that you are able to hold onto all of the previous values and then just add the one new one. And with these deconstructed state variables, you can't like just say, I want to push to it. That isn't how this works. We have to use the setter. So we're going to do it a little differently. So in this case, we're going to call set food list because that's what we're trying to do, is to set the list to a new value. And then all we have to do is do like we did before in the other area and put a little function in here that passes in the pref state. And then we're basically just saying, here's what I want to return. And because I'm doing this in one line, I don't have to actually have the word return. I can just put what it is that I'm returning. And wow, again, with the, okay. And we want to use pref state. So this is, you can update arrays with these spread operators the same way that you would do objects. And it basically just says, go grab all of the existing values and throw them in here, but hey, I want to add another one. So I'm just going to use a comma. And I'm going to use this new food entry object that I just created. So all of the objects that exist in this list are going to have this structure. They'll have an ID, a description, and a calorie. And this is equal to, whatever was entered at the time. But it's going to save those values permanently, because remember, as soon as after that submit button hits and we send it up to the app component and save it here, we reset those back to empty strings, but this is where we're storing them permanently. And then it should actually show up down in the table, which we will make sure is set in properly in a second. But let's set our exercise list first. And we'll do the same thing. We're going to call pref state, pass that in, and return. Don't do it. Oh man. I don't know why this is happening, guys. It doesn't usually. Don't do it. Okay, pre-state, and then we'll add the new exercise entry that we just created right here. And that will combine with any previous ones that were entered to be updated in this state variable exercise list. Okay, so our list is updating, our list exists and it's updating. So now we just need to go down and see what's happening in the actual panel itself, where we go to the tab and we have the form, and then it should be like right below the form. So right now, in the food and beverage section, we have that header that we've seen that's right here, but there's nothing below it, right? So let's go ahead and make sure that we have the details table component. And when I say details table component, you're like, wait, what's that component, right? Well, that's a component that doesn't have its own file, but it exists right here. It's just a helper component, and I don't really need access to it anywhere else in my application except here. So there's no reason not to just create it right here in my details file, so that I can just access it directly, and I can, make use of, whatever I need to here. So the first thing I do here is to say I'm going to, pass in some parameters. And then, and basically this is just like saying props. We just can't use props twice for two different things in the same file. So I'm using params instead. And I'm going to say I'm taking whatever's being passed in into this component that's I'm going to, place down below in a minute. And we're going to define these rows, and each row is going to look like this, which is a typical, table row, right? So we have our table structure with a head section and a body section. Our header row is already here with description and calories. So what we're doing is just figuring out what needs to go here. And this is a lot like in Angular when you use ng4 to like loop through things. That's essentially, or you do it in the DOM like this too, where you just kind of say, okay, cycle through and give me this same stuff, but with new information over and over and over again, right? And then whatever that produces, this rows right here, is what is now going to be displayed here. And then this details table component is returning this entire thing right here. So that we get everything we need, and we're placing it down into our details section. So that's pretty much it. So what is this params we're talking about, right? Well, we're going to have a prop or param called list. This is going to be the attribute that we're passing in to details table. And this is how we access it, params.list. Just like in the chart, you had props.numbers. And just like in this one, you have, props.type, right? This is params.list, and we can I can demonstrate that by actually creating it. So we're going to have a details table, and we'll have the list attribute, and we will pass the information in that we want to display. And because all of the content is already included, this can be a self-closing tag here. So as you probably have already figured out, see, I'm in the exercise log right now. So we're going to want that exercise list, right? That's the information. This is the data that we want. We want to go to our state variable, get this data, pass it into this. And then when it gets here, then we use it and map through it and look at it, item by item. And then we grab the ID and the description and the calories. And those are those same objects that we created right here. But we only have to have one thing, and it can be used for both food and for exercise because they're structured the same way. And that was very intentional. And remember with React, you're supposed to have a key anytime you repeat the same thing. So I've just basically used that UID, that unique ID, as both the ID and the key for this. And that's a fairly standard thing to do. And so then, yeah, it displays each of the cells that are in that row, and one by one you get your list. So let's go try it out. Well, hold on. I need to actually place the details table into the food as well. So let's do that real fast. Okay, and again, list equals, only this time we want the food list because this is the food section. And now when we come over here, in theory, yeah, we've got a description column and a calories column. So what happens when we start adding some food? We'll go back to our pizza, and why don't we do something healthy and say carrots and hummus. And how about a Coke Zero, which is, you know, just for posterity, I guess, because it doesn't actually have any calories. But if you can see things listed here one by one, every time I add it, it updates. And you can see, you know, all of the calories, the 620 represented is broken down here. Let's test it over here. I think before I had a 30-minute walk. And then let's say we also go to yoga class. And I think that's enough exercise for one day. Okay, but anyway, yeah, you can see down here. So the last thing, this is kind of a bonus, but it would be nice if you haven't entered anything yet. So let me actually just refresh this so we can see what that looks like. If you haven't entered anything yet, there's nothing to display, then maybe it's better to just not have that there, right? To not even show that part. So how would we do that? We could come over here. And again, this is practicing that shorthand of how you can make, you know, the display of a section conditional. So, you know, it says, make the login table appear only when the first entry is submitted. So basically that just means that you just want for the list to actually have content. And so a quick way to do that would be to, you know, first you have to enclose this in the bracket so that you can put JavaScript logic in it. Okay. And then you just put your expression. See, we're in the exercise section. So we're going to say exercise list dot length. And we will say that it has to be greater than 0. And then use the and operator. And it will display it only if this is true. And then we'll do the same thing up here for the, let's see, did I do it just, yeah, I did for the whole thing. Okay. Same thing here, close that in the curly braces, and then we'll say food list dot length is greater than 0 and div. Okay, so now we come over here and look at that, it's gone, right? But as soon as we, oh, this is calories burned. Pizza eating may burn calories, but not very many. Okay, so let's just do our yoga again. How's that? There we go. And so now it shows up, but only because I finally added the first thing. Okay, and yeah, and we have negative 200 calories. Okay, and so, you know, let's put in a some soup. Doesn't even matter what kind. There we go. Yep, and now it shows up. Okay, I feel like there was another bonus. Disable the button if the description or calories field is empty. Oh yeah. So this is a similar similar syntax. And we can use it for this as well. So let's go back over to the buttons. Here's the button. Okay, so with the browser already has this, you know, recognizes this disabled property that just exists on the button tag, right? But you can make it conditional by putting some logic in here. So basically, we just want to say that we only want it to be disabled if so we're in food description input is empty, or food cal input is empty, and that takes care. I mean, they could both be empty, and this one of them would return true, and so it would be disabled. All right, and then we'll copy that down and put it in here, and then change this to exercise and exercise. Okay, and then we'll have an opportunity to test it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so it's grayed out, and I can't click on it. Nothing's happened. Doesn't give me the cursor pointer. But if I put some pizza in, still grayed out. But as soon as I add some calories, Now it's available again. I've got the right pointer and it works. Okay, cool deal. The last part, the last bonus here is for animation. I'm not going to take the time to go through that right now, but there are instructions, and basically it's all there for you. It's just in a different branch, and the solution is there. So you can go and just kind of check out all the code that's been added. And it's just a little thing. It just basically makes this number here kind of fade out and fade back in every time it changes. But it's a good kind of introduction to how you integrate things like that in a React app. So I thought you guys might want to take a look at that. All right, that is it. Guys, certainly let me know if you ran into any issues with the instructions or have any further questions.